In a small New England town, Harrington High School was renowned not only for its outstanding academic program, but also for a dark secret. In 1983, during an unexpected lockdown, several students and teachers vanished without a trace. Despite thorough investigations, the mystery remained unsolved, turning into an urban legend. Decades later, a group of students decided to delve into this story for a school project. Nathan, the group's leader, was particularly captivated by the mystery, convinced that the truth was still hidden within the school walls. One evening, Nathan and his friends sneaked into the school, equipped with cameras and flashlights. As they explored the quiet hallways, the lockdown suddenly activated again. The loudspeakers broadcasted a cryptic message: "Stay where you are. Do not leave until further notice." The teens found themselves trapped, just like those who disappeared in 1983. As they searched for an exit, they began hearing strange noises, footsteps in the hallway, barely audible whispers, and occasionally a faint moan. Discovering an abandoned classroom, they found a dusty diary. It belonged to one of the missing students and revealed disturbing details. The diary described visions of shadows in the corridors and tormented dreams. The author had begun investigating old urban legends surrounding the school, including a story about an ancient ritual performed in the building's underground. Feeling a growing sense of dread, Nathan realized they needed to find that place. Continuing their exploration, they discovered a hidden door behind a bookcase in an old library. Behind it, they found stairs leading down into the depths of the school. With a mix of terror and curiosity, they descended, only to discover an ancient ritual room with strange symbols carved on the walls and an air heavy with mystery. Nathan began reading the inscriptions aloud, which seemed to be part of an ancient ritual. As he read, a cold breeze began to blow through the room, and their flashlights flickered. The shadows on the walls seemed to move as if alive. Suddenly, a whispering voice filled the room, speaking in an unknown language. The words echoed as if from another world, bridging a sense of despair and fear. Nathan and his friends realized that they had awakened something ancient and dangerous. Panicking, they tried to escape the room, but the door had mysteriously closed. Recalling the diary's words, Nathan suggested the only way out was to complete the ritual. Reluctantly, they began reciting the inscriptions together, hoping to appease the entity they had disturbed. As they spoke those ancient words, the room shook, and the voice intensified, almost in anger. Then, suddenly everything stopped. The cold breeze ceased, and the shadows retreated. With a final effort, Nathan flung open the door, allowing them to escape. Emerging from the school's underground, they found the high school silent and empty. The lockdown had been lifted, but there was no one in sight. The buildings and hallways, once familiar, now seemed foreign and menacing. As they headed towards the exit, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if the entity they had disturbed still followed them in the shadows. After that night, the mystery of the 1983 lockdown at Harrington High remained unsolved, but now it had a new chapter. Nathan and his friends never spoke publicly about their experience, but among themselves, they knew that they had touched something unfathomable and terrible, a secret hidden by the school for generations. In the following days, the high school returned to normal, but for those who knew the truth, it would never be the same. The hallways and classrooms now held echoes of a dark past, a silent warning of what lies hidden in forgotten places. However, the story doesn't end here. After the incident in the school's underground, most of the boys from the group, whose name remained unknown, began to exhibit strange behaviors. Initially, they seemed like mere effects of post-traumatic stress, nightmares, anxiety, and constant unrest. However, it soon became clear that there was something deeper and more sinister afflicting him. His friends noticed he began talking to himself, murmuring incomprehensible phrases, or responding to voices only he could hear. Sometimes they found him standing still, staring to the void as if seeing something others couldn't perceive. His personality seemed to change, oscillating between moments of lucid normality and episodes of odd behavior. Rumors of the students suggested he might have been possessed by a spirit or entity awakened during the ritual in the school's underground. Some recounted seeing him whispering words in an ancient language or finding him a trance in isolated places around the world. Nathan and the rest of the group, disturbed by their friend's transformation and subsequent disappearance, decided never to speak of what happened that night. There was a tacit agreement among them to keep silent, both to protect themselves and out of respect for their missing friend. In a small rural town, Oak Ridge Elementary School was known for its long history and being the site of a disturbing event. In 2005, during a normal school day, a sudden lockdown trapped students and teachers inside for mysterious reasons. When the doors finally opened hours later, all were safe, but deeply shaken. No one ever spoke of what happened during those hours, maintaining an eerie silence, known as the Silence of Oak Ridge. Over the years, many attempted to uncover the truth behind Oak Ridge's silence, but to no avail. Security camera footage from that day had mysteriously disappeared, and all the involved adults refused to discuss the incident. 20 years later, a journalist named Michael, haunted by the mystery since childhood, decided to return to Oak Ridge for a documentary. Approaching former students, now adults, he found many suffering from recurring nightmares and anxiety linked to the event. One former student, Sarah, agreed to speak with Michael. She recounted how, during the lockdown, she and her classmates had heard strange noises from the hallways, footsteps, whispers, and muffled screams. Then, suddenly, an oppressive silence fell over the school. When teachers finally led them out, they were all pale and terrified, but no one spoke of what happened. Sarah revealed that, during the hour of silence, they saw spectral figures moving among the classrooms, and shadows that seemed to take shape then vanish. Even as a child, she felt these presences were tied to a past tragedy of the school, perhaps an ancient fire she had heard about, which had claimed the lives of several children decades earlier. Michael, digging deeper, discovered the school had indeed been built on a site where an old school was destroyed in a fire in the 1940s. This fire had been nearly forgotten, and its victims never properly honored. Convinced that the spirits of the fire's victims were still present and seeking recognition and peace, Michael organized a commemorative ceremony at the school, inviting the community and former students present during the lockdown. During the ceremony, a small monument was erected in memory of the young lives lost in the fire. After the moment's erection, the evening seemed to proceed peacefully. However, a disturbing event disrupted the ceremony. A former student present during the lockdown, a boy named Kevin, suddenly ran out of the class, screaming he had gone to the bathroom. His flight seemed driven by incomprehensible urgency and visible fear. About 5 minutes later, a chilling scream broke the school's silence. "Please don't do it. Please no." Then everything returned to a deathly silence. The teacher, overcoming her fear, rushed to the bathroom from where Kevin's screams had come. The others, too, frightened to move, stayed behind. Opening the bathroom door, the teacher was met with a horrifying scene. Kevin was crouched in a corner, trembling and staring blankly, pointing towards the closed bathroom door. When the teacher opened that door, terror gripped everyone. The floor was covered in blood, but there was no sign of injury on Kevin or indications of another person present. The mystery of that blood remained unsolved. Even more unsettling was the change in Kevin. From that night, he developed a kind of selective mutism, unable to speak or explain what had been seen or experienced. Attempts at therapy and investigations led nowhere. Kevin remained trapped in his silence, his eyes seeming to hide unspeakable terror. The story of the unexplained blood and Kevin's mutism added a dark new chapter to the legend of Oak Ridge. Students and teachers who attended the school later often spoke of the eerie atmosphere lingering in the hallways, especially near the bathroom where the incident occurred. In a remote small town, Pine Grove Middle School was known as much for its excellent academic achievements as for a disturbing figure, the janitor, nicknamed Janitor Joe. Joe was a middle-aged man with a disheveled appearance and a piercing gaze, rumored to have a dark past. The halls were rife with whispers about him. Some said he had been in prison, others spoke of a troubled life, but no one knew the truth. Students shared tales of how Janitor Joe scared them, strange noises in empty classrooms, objects disappearing or found in impossible places, and, above all, his habit of suddenly appearing in dark corridors with a disquieting smile that never reached his cold eyes. A particularly daring group of students decided to investigate Janitor Joe. They wanted to see if there was any truth to the stories. One night, they sneaked into the school, planning to follow him and discover what he did after school hours. Hiding in the shadows, they watched Joe move with an eerie grace through the halls, stopping occasionally as if listening to something they couldn't hear. At some point, one of the students, Mike, broke away from the group, driven by curiosity to explore the janitor's office. Inside the office, Mike found old newspaper clippings on the walls, articles about unsolved disappearances and unresolved crimes. In the center, there was a photo of a child with eyes crossed out in red. As he examined these disturbing findings, he heard a heavy breath behind him. Turning abruptly, he found himself face to face with Janitor Joe. Joe's eyes glowed maliciously as he stared at Mike. With a terrifying smile, he began to tell a story of revenge and madness, about how he lost his son years ago, and how his tormented soul sought justice. He spoke of his enjoyment in frightening the students, watching and manipulating them for his macabre amusement. His voice was a hoarse whisper, laden with suppressed pain and anger. Paralyzed with fear, Mike listened as Joe detailed his actions, implying, without directly admitting, that he had caused the disappearance of several students over the years. He told how he had followed them, frightened them, and left clues that no one had ever connected to him. Suddenly, the other students burst into the office, having heard Mike's voice. Janitor Joe, startled, stopped and looked at them with a gaze mixing madness and sadness. Without a word, he quickly walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the corridors. The students, shaken and terrified, ran out of the school and called the police. When the authorities arrived and examined Joe's office, they found the newspaper clippings and the photo of the child, but no trace of Joe. Investigations revealed that Joe had indeed lost a son under tragic circumstances years ago, but there was no concrete evidence linking him to the disappearance or crimes. The community was rocked by the incident. Janitor Joe became a legend, a shadow hovering over Pine Grove. Some claim to have seen him wandering in the woods near the school. Others told of hearing his footsteps in empty corridors. However, he was never captured, and no further evidence of his misdeeds surfaced. The students of Pine Grove Middle School continued to live with doubt and fear. The mystery of Janitor Joe remained unsolved, a dark stain in the school's history. For years, suspicion and stories about him circulated among the students, a constant reminder of the shadows hidden behind familiar faces and the untold truths that can haunt a place for generations. The tale of Janitor Joe, with his dark past and unsettling actions, remained shrouded in mystery. Some students swore they saw him watching them from the school's dark windows on full moon nights. Others reported strange noises and feelings of being watched when alone. But the truth about Joe, whether he had ever really harmed anyone or was just a tormented soul trying to scare others to exorcise his own pain, remained an enigma. The story of Janitor Joe became a cautionary tale, a whisper in the corridors, a reminder that sometimes the true horror isn't in the monsters under the bed, but in the shadows moving at the edges of our everyday lives, in the untold stories and unrevealed secrets. In the quiet American town of Greenfield, something extraordinary and terrifying unfolded at the local high school. On an ordinary school day, Mr. Harrison's class suddenly found itself in a lockdown. While the rest of the school went about its day, Harrison's students were isolated without explanation. Confused and frightened, the students speculated wildly about the cause of the lockdown. Mr. Harrison, known for his unorthodox teaching methods, tried to soothe the class. To distract them, he produced a Ouija board, suggesting they use it to pass the time. At first, the students were amused by the idea, but the mood quickly darkened. As they engaged with the board, disturbing messages began to appear. Nonsensical words, threats, and dark prophecies. The classroom lights flickered, and a chilling cold filled the air. Panic set in among the students, who accused Mr. Harrison of unleashing something dangerous. However, the teacher insisted it was just a game, a ploy to scare them and test their rationality. Tensions peaked when one student, Alex, began acting bizarrely. He spoke in an unrecognizable voice, claimed to hear voices commanding him to harm. The other students, now terrified, kept their distance as Alex whispered unsettling phrases. After hours of tension, the classroom door finally opened. Police officers and school psychologists greeted the students, revealing that there had been no real lockdown. It was a fake message created by Mr. Harrison for the class radio, intended to frighten the students as part of a twisted psychological experiment. Mr. Harrison was immediately arrested for endangering the safety and well-being of his students. The students, still shaken, were escorted out of the school, but the damage had been done. It seemed like the ordeal was over, but not for Alex. He continued to claim he heard voices telling him to kill his sister. Despite therapy and medical intervention, his mental state rapidly deteriorated. Eventually, Alex was admitted to a psychiatric facility, isolated and haunted by the voices only he could hear. The Greenfield community was rocked by the incident. Many students and parents wondered whether what happened in the classroom was the result of a cruel prank, or if the Ouija board had indeed unleashed something incomprehensible and evil. The tale of Mr. Harrison's experiment became a cautionary tale about human nature and the dangers of delving into forces beyond understanding. In a small American town, Oakwood High School was known for its academic excellence and strong community spirit. However, beneath the surface of normalcy, a forgotten tragedy was simmering, soon to resurface with unimaginable consequences. The school lockdown began like any other day, with sunlight streaming through the hallways and students engaged in their daily routines. Suddenly, an emergency announcement interrupted the routine, broadcasting a cryptic message through the speakers that ordered an immediate lockdown without providing further details. As students took refuge in classrooms, locking doors and windows as protocol dictated, the atmosphere became saturated with tension and fear. The overloaded cellular network made it impossible to obtain information from outside, leaving everyone in total uncertainty. Among the school staff was a janitor, Mr. Thompson, a solitary and mysterious man known for his dedication to work, but also for the tragic loss of his son under circumstances never fully clarified. His son, who had attended the same school, had died in a car accident the previous year, leaving the father in a state of perpetual mourning. As the hours passed and the lockdown persisted without explanation, some students began to notice strange behavior in Mr. Thompson. The man, who usually avoided eye contact and spoke little, was now wandering the hallways with a fixed and penetrating gaze, as if searching for someone or something. The situation deteriorated when Mr. Thompson started to knock insistently on classroom doors, demanding students come out. His voice, once gentle, now conveyed a sense of urgency and threat. Some students, frightened, reported hearing him mutter his son's name, as if he was searching for him among them. It soon became evident that the janitor was losing touch with reality, mistaking some students for his deceased son, especially those who shared physical similarities. His obsession led him to try to force his way into the classrooms, armed with work tools, determined to reunite with the son he believed was still alive. In the heart of the lockdown, a group of students and teachers, understanding the gravity of the situation, decided to act. They organized a plan to neutralize the threat posed by Mr. Thompson, using their wits and the resources available in the school building. The tension reached its peak in a final confrontation in the dark hallways, where the students managed to disarm the janitor and immobilize him until the arrival of law enforcement, who were surprised by the situation they faced. The lockdown ended with the discovery of Mr. Thompson's tragic descent into madness, and he was taken into custody and subjected to psychiatric evaluation. The school and the community had to come to terms with the consequences of that event, reflecting on the fragility of the human mind and the importance of emotional and psychological support. In the weeks that followed, the school sought to return to normalcy. Students and staff worked together to overcome the trauma, participating in group therapy sessions and support meetings. Then, unsettling rumors began to circulate. Mr. Thompson had mysteriously disappeared from the psychiatric center where he had been admitted. The circumstances of his escape were shrouded in mystery, with little information released by the authorities and a palpable sense of urgency in their search. The news of the disappearance spread quickly among students and staff, reigniting the fear and anxiety that had just begun to fade. The tension grew when word spread that Mr. Thompson had been seen near the school, his hungry eyes scanning beyond the gates, as if searching for something or someone. Students began to move in groups, avoiding being alone even for short periods. Local authorities increased surveillance around the school, promising to do everything possible to capture the fugitive. But the question on everyone's mind was, what was Mr. Thompson looking for? What could drive a man already deeply disturbed to risk everything to return to a place that had witnessed his collapse? The saga of mystery and tension surrounding Mr. Thompson, once a respected janitor at Oakwood High, took a dark and unsettling turn when his bizarre behavior towards a student emerged. This student, due to his physical resemblance, reminded him closely of his tragically lost son. Thompson attempted to take the student out of the school and began shouting at him, saying he did not deserve to live and that it should have been his son alive, not him. The boy, having escaped the encounter with Thompson, brought home a story that would fuel rumors for weeks to come. Although physically unharmed, the experience left him shaken and terrified, a sentiment that echoed throughout the community. The boy's family, especially the father, known for his violent temperament and propensity to take justice into his own hands, became the focus of attention. Mr. Thompson's disappearance the day after the incident added fuel to the fire. His sudden and definitive absence fueled a series of conflicting theories. Some suggested that the boy's father had taken matters into his own hands, enacting brutal and definitive justice to protect his son from further threats. This hypothesis was grounded in the man's character and his known aversion to anyone he perceived as a threat to his family. On the other hand, there were also whispers of a more tragic fate for Thompson. Overwhelmed by the remorse for the terror inflicted on the innocent student, and unable to cope with the loss of his son, he might have been overcome by despair, choosing to end his own life in a moment of madness. The lack of a body, however, left these theories in the realm of speculation, without concrete evidence to support either. The Oakwood community was divided between these two narratives, with the mystery of Thompson's disappearance deepening day by day. Authorities continued their search, but without success. The case seemed destined to remain unresolved, another scar on the already tested fabric of the town. At Westfield High, a well-regarded American high school nestled in a quiet suburban town, the arrival of Miss Harper, a new and attractive English teacher, sparked immediate interest among the student body. Her grace and approachable manner made her especially popular. Among her admirers was Ethan, a quiet and introverted student, whose fascination with Miss Harper's beauty, particularly her elegant skirts and seated obsession. Ethan found himself captivated not just by her teaching, but by every aspect of her presence, seeing in her an embodiment of his most intense desires. As months passed, Ethan's admiration turned into an all-consuming fixation. Miss Harper, with her poise and style, became the center of this world, pushing him to find a way to express his feelings, no matter how misguided or unrealistic. The perfect opportunity presented itself during a scheduled lockdown drill at Westfield High, an exercise designed to prepare students and staff for potential emergencies. Seizing the chaos and confusion of the drill, Ethan managed to lure Miss Harper into the teacher's lounge, a space momentarily abandoned by its usual occupants. Once alone, Ethan revealed his feelings to her, declaring her as his constant thought and desire, hoping for reciprocation of his affection. However, Miss Harper's reaction was one of shock and rejection. She called him insane, sternly telling him to snap out of it and return to class, outright refusing his advances. Faced with rejection, Ethan, overwhelmed by despair and unable to cope with her refusal, made a drastic choice. He threw himself out of the lounge window, falling to the ground below and suffering severe injuries. Emergency services quickly responded, and Ethan was rushed to the hospital, where he was stabilized. The incident led his parents to make the difficult decision to move him to a different school, hoping for a fresh start away from the source of his obsession. 10 years passed since that fateful day. Miss Harper, now retired, was enjoying a peaceful life far removed from the demands of teaching. But the past came knocking when she heard her doorbell ring one day. Standing there was Ethan, the student who had once professed his love in such a dramatic manner. Terrified by his appearance, Miss Harper immediately called the police, fearing for her safety. However, the officers could only note that Ethan hadn't committed any crime by merely ringing the doorbell. Despite this, Miss Harper was terrified at the thought that Ethan's obsession might not have waned over the years. In the days that followed, Ethan's presence near her home became a constant reminder of a chapter in her life she wished to forget. Feeling unprotected and fearing for her safety, she decided to move away from the town that had been the backdrop of their unsettling story. The tale of Ethan and Miss Harper became a cautionary reminder of the destructive nature of obsession and the deep scars it can leave, not just on the lives of those who harbor it, but also on their unintended victims. It underscores the importance of respecting personal boundaries and dealing with one's feelings in a healthy and constructive manner. In a peaceful American town within the prestigious halls of Franklin High School, daily life unfolded with teachers and students immersed in studies, friendships, and the first flutters of adolescent crushes. Among these students was Michael, known for his outstanding academic achievements, but also for a particular obsession that had begun to raise concerns among his peers. Michael was fixated on a locked door in the old wing of the school, a section abandoned for years due to incomplete renovations. This door, always locked and shrouded in mystery, had become the subject of many students' curiosity, but none were as captivated by it as Michael. He spent hours watching it, trying to peer through the keyhole or listen for sounds from the other side. His obsession became so apparent that he began neglecting his studies, friendships, and even his health, consumed by the need to discover what lay behind the door. Initially, Michael's friends, intrigued, tried to dissuade him, but every attempt proved futile. Michael was convinced that behind the door lay something extraordinary, a secret so significant it justified his obsession. His determination led him to research the building's history, uncovering that the abandoned section had once been the school's library, closed after a fire had partially damaged it. Persuading the school's administrators to reopen the door proved impossible. Concerns for safety and the risk of collapses were too great. However, Michael refused to give up. One night, he decided to act. Armed with a set of lock-picking tools secretly taken from the technology lab, he sneaked into the school, determined to defy the prohibitions. Opening the door proved more challenging than expected, but after hours of effort, Michael managed to pick the lock. What he found on the other side, however, was not the treasure or secret he had imagined. Instead of ancient books or mysterious objects, there was only an empty room, with black marks of the fire and a strong smell of mold. The reality behind Michael's obsession was merely a forgotten and damaged part of the school, nothing more. The discovery was a hard blow to Michael. All the time and energy spent, the isolation from friends, and neglect of his school duties, all for nothing. The following morning, he was found by the security staff and faced with consequences of his actions, including suspension and mandatory counseling sessions with the school psychologist. Michael's story at Franklin High School took an even darker turn after his return to school. Sessions with the school psychologist revealed that his obsession with the locked door stemmed from childhood trauma. As a child, he was often locked in his room by his parents as punishment, leaving him to cope with loneliness and a desire to escape. This unveiled the depth of his disturbance, but despite the counseling, the ghosts of the past continued to haunt him. For a brief period, Michael seemed to reintegrate into school life, but his fixation on the locked door resurfaced. The situation deteriorated when a classmate, unaware of Michael's deep-seated trauma, mocked his previous obsession. This act of derision reawakened in Michael a vengeful impulse he had suppressed for years. Days later, using a ruse, Michael lured the mocking classmate to the door, which he found surprisingly less secure than before. Easily opening it, he dragged the boy inside the room, where he attempted to enact a chilling plan, setting him on fire, mimicking the fire that had ravaged that part of the building years earlier. Michael's attempt was halted by the timely intervention of law enforcement, alerted by another student who had witnessed the scene. Michael was arrested, and during the interrogation, he revealed that his actions were driven by a desire for revenge, rooted in how he had been treated by his parents in his early years. He confessed that, in the darkest moments of his childhood, he had imagined committing the same act against them as a form of rebellion against the imprisonment they imposed on him. The Franklin High School community was shocked by the revelation and the escalation of events. Michael's tragedy became a case study on the long-term consequences of childhood trauma and the need for timely and appropriate psychological intervention. It also highlighted the importance of a school environment that promotes empathy and understanding, rather than judgment and ridicule. Michael's story ended with his detention and treatment in a specialized institution, where he finally received the help he needed to face his traumas. The locked door at Franklin High was permanently sealed, becoming a silent symbol of the dangers of ignorance and lack of understanding, but also of hope that even the deepest wounds can begin to heal with the right support. In the quiet afternoon at Oakwood High, a school well regarded for its commitment to student education and safety, no one could have foreseen the events that would unfold. At the heart of the story was Nathan, a boy known for his extraordinary computer skills, but also for his seclusion and isolation from his peers. Nathan harbored a secret. He was in love with Emily, a popular and amiable classmate whose kindness towards everyone had captured his heart. However, Emily was the object of affection for many, including Mike, a friendly and well-liked boy at the school, who unknowingly had become Nathan's rival. Consumed by blinding jealousy, Nathan devised a dark plan to remove the obstacle between him and his unrequited love for Emily. Taking advantage of his computer skills, Nathan managed to infiltrate the school's security system, triggering a fake lockdown. As alarms echoed through the corridors and confusion spread, Nathan lured Mike into an isolated part of the building, away from curious eyes and potential interference. The confrontation between Nathan and Mike was tense, with Nathan, driven by a mix of anger and despair, ready to do the unthinkable. However, before he could act, Emily, suspecting their absence and sensing the dangerous situation, managed to find the location of their confrontation. With maturity and bravery beyond her years, Emily intervened between Nathan and Mike, confronting Nathan in a tension-filled dialogue. With measured words and forced calm, she confessed to Nathan a love she did not feel, hoping to calm his fury and prevent a tragedy. Her intervention had the desired effect. Nathan, overwhelmed by emotions and the sudden change of scenario, lowered his guard, allowing the authorities to intervene. Alerted by other students, they finally managed to break the lockdown and step in. Nathan was arrested, and the revelations about his actions and intentions deeply shook the Oakwood High School community. Despite the gravity of his deeds, Nathan once again demonstrated his computer prowess, sending Emily a cryptic message that revealed his unresolved obsession. "You are mine." This message was the last straw for Emily, who decided to leave the city in search of a new beginning, away from the shadow of a sick love that had risked turning into a tragedy.